Floppycatters! Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Penny, who is also known as Dr. Zoolittle. Penny is a health and welfare zoologist and an applied cognitive ethologist. She specializes in regenerative and anti-aging medicine and captive animal mental health and well-being. Penny, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me to talk about cats. That's so rare.
I I will explain how I knew of you and met you and that sort of thing, but can you please explain what a welfare zoologist is and applied cognitive ethologist is?
With pleasure. So, zoologist is simply a scientist of animals, which is incredibly broad. So within that, really, animal welfare is my number one. So it didn't mean I studied just that. I studied behavioral neuroscience. I studied structure and function of animals, animal behavior, the whole thing. But all of that was very intentional to be pointing towards how can we lift up animal welfare. So welfare zoologist really just sums it up and says that's my specialty within this enormous field of animal science. And then an applied cognitive ethologist. Let me start with ethology first of all. So that is the science of animal behavior. So it's just a bit easier. Well, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder to say because people are like, are you an ethnologist or an etho? What? It just gets messy. So, but yeah, cognitive ethologist is really then focusing the attention in animal behavior that is cognitive, is intentional, is thought about, right? So we know that animals have instincts, right, to do this or do that, and they're not processing that, they're just responding. That's a different type of behavior. Those are sort of survival behaviors, or it's something like, why a bird song would be like it is, or a spider's web would do it, right? But I'm looking more at relationships and problem solving and how are animals communicating with each other? How are they deciding how to budget their time? How much leisure time do they have? Who's in control of the social hierarchy and how? So all of those kind of things fall under the cognitive. So that means that when I'm working with them, it's usually on a relationship-based thing because I'm already understanding who they are as an animal. And applied just simply means I'm working with the animals, taking the science and putting it into action, applying it rather than sitting in some university doing research.
Got it. And this is something I think from other interviews that I've heard with you that you kind of created to be like you felt like this is what you were brought to do in this world. Is that
Oh,
correct?
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know when I was a kid, when I decided that I was going to work basically being friends with and improving the happiness of animals. That was kind of my simplistic way of explaining it when I was 5 years old. And I was like, I'm going to work in the zoo and make animals happy by being their friend. So I didn't have a fancy pants name for it back then. But whenever I tried to explain that to people, they're like, there's no such job. Like, it doesn't exist. You're dreaming. You're like, go away and come back with another idea. Go away, study, go be a vet. And I was like, no, I'm not. I know I'm not supposed to be a vet. Like, I just know I'm not supposed to be a vet. Oh, love to vets, but like, it wasn't me, right? And I was like, no. So I looked for a very long time to find the right label. I remember at university, I would just go to the zoology library and just grab books off the shelf. And I was like, who wrote this and what's their title? Who is my match? And then eventually I found this fabulous gentleman called Mark Beckhoff, who works out of Colorado University and does amazing work in studying cognitive ethology. And I was like, oh, he ticks every box of that must be what I am. So, so that's what I pitched for and claimed it.
That's awesome. I coach field hockey to high school kids, and I'm always telling them, like, what do you get lost in? Like, that's what you focus on. Don't focus on what your parents want you to focus on. I mean, honor that in a way, but always go after like what it's ever passionate. But so many people don't have that opportunity to be aware, cognitively aware of what they're meant to do or like how to go after it. So I think that that's really neat that you knew at 5.
I mean,
Amazing.
it was just, I mean, I'd already loved animals. My earliest memories were of the little chicks and guinea pigs that we had at kindergarten. Like I actually remember that, not my house or my parents or something else kind of important. So animals was already in my blood at that point in time, and it was when I was 5, and this was not my first trip to the zoo, but it was a significant one because we went with school, and so we did this extra stuff with the classroom and whatever. But we saw, I for the first time saw a keeper, a human being, go inside the animal enclosure. I'd never seen that before. I'd only seen people on one side, animals on the other side, and animals really not interested in doing anything with the humans, and the humans there going, knock, 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 hey, and doing all these things and bugging them. And I was like, this is a bit of a broken system, And then this keeper went into the sea lions, and I was like, oh, they're going in. It's like, what's going to happen? This was like the most dramatic, exciting thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And in that minute, that was it. Game over for the rest of my life. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go make friends with them, build this bridge, have this trust, have this love, have this play, have this enhancement of their quality of life. Not only am I going to get buzzed out of that, but I'm just going to see hundreds of little whiskery faces effectively smiling back at me however they smiled. And I was like, what better reward is there on the planet? So I'm in 100% agreement with what you're saying about the coaching that you're giving your team, right? And the answer is find what's exciting. Find what really just lights you up, what you cannot stop thinking about, what you like have thousands of curiosity questions for. That's your thing. Whatever that
Yes.
is, like, bless you on it. Like, it doesn't matter what, that's the thing. And at no point in your life should you ever stop doing that. It doesn't have to be your career, but it's got to be a hobby. It's got to be a circle of friends that you have that have a common interest. You've got to connect with that somehow, because that's really a big chunk of your life. That's your joy.
Yes, I agree. So right now, are you in the UK?
Right at this minute, yes, I am.
Okay. And then I remember, and I can't believe I remember anything really because I'm going through menopause. So I'm like, my brain is whacked. But you're from Australia,
Yes.
but the zoo that was going to allow you to do what you would like to do was in the UK.
I had an opportunity as a stepping stone to come up into something that started to look more like what I was dreaming about. And there are fabulous zoos in Australia. They are really world class. But when I knocked on the door and had conversations with them as a graduate, they were like, oh my goodness, yes, you've got such great ideas, but we just don't have a job for you. Like, you're ahead of your time. Come back in 10 years. So I went, all right then, but I'm not doing nothing in 10 years. I'm going to go to some zoo conferences, and I'm going to go and study further things and whatever. So it meant that when an opportunity came up here, I was like, well, I'm taking it, because I know that back home they're not ready for me.
Yes. Yes. So I saw you on an interview, there was a seminar that Jeff Grognet did. Jeff Grognet is a DVM out of Canada, I think.
Holistic vet.
Yes. And so you had an offer that like anybody watching could reach out to you, and you now that offer is $12. You will spend a half an hour, yes, with someone and answer any questions they have. So when I listen to those kind of interviews, I listen not only as a cat owner, but also as a website owner about cats, because I'm asked so many questions like, Jenny, I don't know what to feed my cat, or what's the best thing to feed my cat, or I want to feed raw, but I feel like I'm not, I don't have an idea if it's nutritionally complete. So I reached out to you to do this offer that you extended, thinking like, this is ridiculous, because you offered it at such a low cost that I was like, this is silly. Whatever, I'll just do it. And I was on a walk. So I called in. It was a Zoom call, but I phoned in because I was on a walk, and we had an awesome conversation. I remember being like, man, what a poor, pitiful attitude I had going into this. And then I just felt like alive afterwards. And that's when I wanted to have you on because of how well that conversation went. So, can you explain why you're offering what you do at such a low cost
Well,
initially?
yeah, so first of all, it's really because as we've just demonstrated with my bio, people are like, well, what's a longevity zoologist? What's a welfare zoologist? What's a cognitive ethologist? Like, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I really must book an appointment with the longevity zoologist. It just doesn't happen. Whereas you might do that and think, oh, I'm going to see my accountant or the vet or go to the bank. You know what these jobs are. And yet we've got a huge pet population that are suffering all kinds of issues on the health side and on the welfare side. Of course, I do both, right? I've got all of that, neuroscience and behavior and zoology stuff, but then I've got the functional regenerative medicine and the zoo pharmacognosy and things that are on the health side of things, so that we can put both things together for the animal. So it's a relatively, and in fact, I think it's completely unique. If anybody knows of someone else who's doing this, please let me know, because I'm looking for them. I'd like to have a conversation, but I'm doing something that's a bit pioneering, a little bit groundbreaking, a little bit unusual, but the problem is huge. So there's got to be some way of connecting so that people know what's out there, know that there's something more than a vet. Now, vets are fantastic, and especially if you've got accident, injury, transmittable diseases, things like that, vets are fabulous. But the toolkit of medicine that they learn when they go to vet school is limited to putting a band-aid on the solution if it's anything that's like in the body, anything chronic, anything lifestyle, anything aging related, anything, and that's a big chunk of stuff. But also they don't get nutrition training, apart from maybe 10 minutes of it once, and they don't really go into behavior. They don't understand the animal mind. They're not, because they're doing a different degree, right? But we as a pet parent, we have all those needs for our animals, right? They start doing crazy behaviors, and you're like, well, I don't know. And so there are animal trainers and animal behaviorists and things that people can see, but not so many of them, and they're kind of pricey, and you may or may not have access to doing that. And then equally, if you're trying to resolve a chronic condition, one of those so-called incurable diseases, arthritis, dementia, obesity problems, which is obviously incurable, but chronic kidney disease, cancer, these things, and the medical system will tell you, game over, just take these drugs and fingers crossed, right? And it's just like, no, please don't believe that. Please know that there is so much more. There is a huge amount of stuff that you can do, but who's telling them that? This tiny handful of holistic vets are doing a fabulous job of communicating that out there. But again, they're not coming from the behavior and the animal connection point of view, the animal training side of things that I've had from working in the zoos. So the long story short with all of that is, I just want to make something available for people who've never heard about it, who have a problem, who don't know where else to go, and who maybe can't afford a big time specialist. So there's an opportunity to come and speak with me. I'm not too scary to talk to, I get a bit excited, but I'll just tell it how it is, and I'll be there to listen and give you something of value to walk away from. So it's a small investment for something that hopefully is then rolled outable, what kind of word is that, in your life. And if you then want to continue to work with me, then I've got something to offer you. But there's no hard sell on this, because I know that it's not for everyone. They just need an answer to get unstuck.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times, someone might come and post on my Facebook group that their cat started acting erratically a week ago. There's been no changes. Diet's the same, litter's the same. And so a vet might go and do blood work or suggest a neurologist or whatever. And then you find out that they got a new smart home device and the cat's responding to that. Right. Or they started using a diffuser with essential oils that are toxic to cats. So that, yes, it's an opportunity to really dive deep into something like that as well, I think.
Being able to suggest some things that are beyond what the common zeitgeist knowledge kind of is, to go into we operate on information coming into our body, and then we process that and we make a decision as a result. Animals are exactly the same, right? But their input processes and ours are different, right? I'm governed by eyesight. That's my primary sense organ. For a dog, it's the nose, right? So there's a whole world of sensory information that's going into a dog, and they're acting and responding and making decisions according to that I'm oblivious to. I'm effectively blind to that, right? So whenever I'm looking at why did an animal do something for no reason, right? It's never for no reason. But most people don't remember that they need to look beyond the human boundaries of sensory information input, whereas our animals are highly sensitive in some areas that we're not. And you're quite right to point out, like an EMF or sense aromas that are on the thing, pheromones that are coming from another cat or dog or whatever, however far away. We've got no idea that that's going on. But at least
Yes.
I can start to suggest these possibilities to people, and then they can make neighborhood inquiries about something maybe, or we can, get rid of that diffuser thing. We can start to take some steps. And again, it's still a process of elimination of, I can't interview the cat and say, listen, why did you go freak out, right? But we can look for patterns. So I can say, is it in proximity to this area? Is it when they're outside that they start to wind up? Is it at nighttime? Or, there's a bunch of interesting questions that we can ask that maybe other, the sort of go-to person, the vet usually is the go-to person for anybody with an animal, isn't able to do that. It's not their training. It's not their toolkit.
Yes. Yes. What's a cat's primary sense of what do they when they first sense something? If ours is eyes and dogs is nose, is a cat's nose too?
Surprisingly, no. Cats actually have the biggest eye to head ratio of any animal on the planet. Excuse me, any mammal. Let me just put it that way, because there's probably some inverts that break that rule. But anyway, so vision is huge, but then ears. They're stealthy. They're doing a lot of, I mean,
Yeah, it's just a
they're
minor
right.
minor adjustment sometimes. Yeah.
Cats and owls are pretty similar in that sense. An owl actually has its ears in two different positions on its head, unlike
Yes.
ours, right? Because they're triangulating. So they can tell at the speed of which sound is coming because their ears are in balance, right? Whereas cats have got this amazing satellite disc swivelly thing. And you don't see cats with floppy over ears like dogs, right? Because this is a pretty primary thing. But they've also got a huge amount of light and stuff that come in, and the number of rods that they've got in their eyes, which are the sense cells that pick up movement and operate in low light or in black and white scale, so finely tuned. And cats can also have, for example, the cheetah will have the concentration of visual acuity across a horizontal plane, whereas most of us have this sort of blob where it's richer and more, that's our fovea, right? And the reason why is because a cheetah needs to look at the horizon line. They're as far as big cats go, they're a really little light-framed, vulnerable cat. So they always like to go up on the high ground, right? And notice our cats are the same. They really, really value the high ground, right? Because they're not a pack animal. They don't have each other to look after each other. We create that in captivity, and that's fine. They get on with that. But they're vulnerable, unlike a dog. So they've got to go, I've got to get up here, I've got to get a vantage point, I've got to scan. It's like building a castle on top of the hill, right? So you can see your enemies coming, right? So the cheetah does that. So their best visual acuity is this line, which is the horizon, because I want to see, is a friend coming? Is an enemy coming? Or is dinner coming? Because I've got to be clued with all of that. So vision for cats is number one, and then ears very, very close behind, and then nose comes in third.
Interesting. How do they figure out what the visual acuity is of a cheetah?
It's a really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but we see huge changes in cheetah behavior in captivity when we give them elevated ground. It's now compulsory. It's now in the zoo standards that if you've got a cheetah, there's a couple other things as well, but you need to give them a rise. You need to give them a mound so that they can get up high. Otherwise, a cheetah on ground level has huge amounts of cortisol and stress hormones. Their captive breeding programs suffer because they're just too stressed to carry to term. Their appetite goes wrong. Their digestion starts going squiffy because you've messed up the hormones in the. So you pop a perch in there, effectively a hill, a mound, a fort, whatever you want, right? And they go happy cheetah, especially if they can watch someone else who's in the zoo. So if they can watch the elephants, or if they can watch the gazelle, or they can watch some sheep, like it really doesn't matter who that, but they like to watch someone else in the zoo, so give them that position, and you've got a much better, happier, better welfare cheetah.
Wow. I think I said this to you when we were talking before, but I would love to go to Kansas City Zoo with you and just walk around and learn from you. Like that's okay. So if the visual acuity for a cheetah is like that, do you know what it is for a tiger and a lion?
But I don't specifically, but I suspect it's going to be different. A tiger is a jungle creature. It's ambush.
Yes.
They don't have a big line of sight the way a cheetah does up on a Serengeti plain. Um, there's a good chance a lion has more of that horizontal, but I'm not gonna tell you what I don't know. But I would bet my boots that a tiger has a regular one that is, what we're more familiar with. because
Yes.
it's just where do you live? What's your lifestyle? What's important
Yes.
information for you to have developed, you know?
Yes. So the reason I asked that is then I thought, get it out, Jenny. How does the visual acuity differ within domestic cats, or would it, do you think?
Again, I haven't seen a paper that's sort of telling me specifically about it. So I'm going to, with Occam's razor, right, you kind of take the most likely solution. If it's not being talked about, it's probably normal. I say normal as in what we're usually familiar with. It's probably this focal area. Now, I am guessing when I say that, so please don't anyone just suddenly take that for gospel. But the cheetah's sort of a bit famous for being a bit different, for a number of reasons, and that's one of them. They also don't have retractable claws the way other cats do, because they need them like little football studs so that they can get that speed up and on those really tricky angles. So a cheetah's a bit of a strange cat, all things considered. This is one of their special adaptations. So on balance, I would imagine that your domestic cat, like the other smaller African cats, because they're not going to hunt a big prey. The big cats take prey bigger than them, or that's sizable, right? Especially lions, because they can cooperatively hunt. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Tigers and snow leopards because of their power, right? But your little sand cats and African wild cats, and those guys, rodents, lizards, birds, eggs. I mean, all things smaller than them. So do they need to be able to do this so much? No, they don't. So ergo, I would say they're more likely to have this more normal style.
Okay. Sorry to go all into that, but I was like, this is fascinating because I
Animals
like
are fascinating.
yes. My mom had a cat named Murphy who had like literally he looked like a cheetah. Like not in his coloring, but in his frame. His body frame was so cheetah-like compared to our other cats. And so I just wondered if it differed within domestic cats as well. Anyway, let's move on. You mentioned how lions hunt in a group, and so then they can bring down a larger animal. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was diet and how important diet is, and especially how that translates to our domestic cats.
Absolutely. I mean, just for 1 second, zooming out, like studying the 4 years of functional regenerative medicine, it's a huge amount of material. I was like, there's no way I can share that amount of knowledge with people when I'm working with them or they want to know answers. So I distilled it. I looked for patterns. I was like, what are the really most fundamental, most foundational, you cannot skip it out kind of things? And so I have these 7 pillars of animal welfare, and 7 pillars of animal longevity, because they really do go together, right? And nutrition's the first one. So it's you just can't escape it. So if you do not put the right building blocks into any kind of factory, you're not going to get a product at the end of it, right? If I can take the most fabulous car parts for some sports car, right, but I'm taking it to a cheese factory, well, I'm not going to get a sports car at the end of it, right? So I've got to put in the right building blocks for that particular machine to get the right output. And when we're talking about animals in that sense, that's the right nutrition for their species biology in order to thrive in health and happiness. So that's our output, right? So if you don't get your diet right, is this factory going to immediately shut down? No. But is it going to be optimal? Absolutely not. Is it going to have breakages and you're going to have to call services in to do? Yeah, absolutely. Are bits going to stop working sooner than they should have? Yes, they are. So species appropriate nutrition is number one, because until that's happening, how can the body do the rest of the things? How can you have fantastic, exercise, movement, alignment? Or how can you have fabulous hormones if you haven't got the building blocks that build a hormone in the first place, right? So we start with nutrition. I mean, I could talk all day on nutrition. So give me something that you would like me to dive into.
What is a species appropriate diet for a domestic cat?
Great question. The same as it is for a lion. It's
Good. I was going to ask, is it the same? Yes, for a big cat. Okay.
Yeah. A cat is a cat is a cat. Now, the cat system, biologically speaking, so we're going to talk now about the digestive system. So that's everything from the mouth to the back of the tail, right? Not literally the back of the tail, but underneath the tail. So that is one great big long tube. If you were to unravel it out, it's really one great big long tube that stays separate from the rest of the body until we want it to not be separate. And that's where we're on the other side of the stomach, in the intestinal system, where we're now taking those nutrients out of the intestines and putting them into the bloodstream, so the bloodstream can now distribute that into the cells and do the work. Okay, but this tube is separate, so we don't want poop going into the body proper. We want it to stay in the tube and then go out the end, and we don't want food going in to suddenly, land in a lung, right? So we keep it in the tube. So that's the digestive system. The digestive system of every species is tailored exactly to that species' lifestyle, their needs, their social environment. It's perfectly designed for who they are. And so for a cat, what we see starting at the top is dentition, teeth, right, for eating meat. And then we do research and we discover that cats don't even have the digestive enzymes to break down plant material. So there's just no question about it. You look at the teeth, it's meat. If you look at their enzymes and their saliva and stuff, it's meat. You look at the stomach acid potency, it's really high. It's stronger than our acid, right? Why is that? Because they're eating raw meat. Can we eat raw meat? No. Why? Because our stomach acid isn't as strong as a dog and a cat. But for them, it is. So any bug, nasty pathogen, E. coli, whatever, gets in that stomach acid, it's gone. It's dead. All game over, right? So then we move down and we go into the gut system itself. Now, if you're an elephant or a koala or somebody who's eating grass and leaves, that part of the digestive system goes for miles. I mean, not literally, but it's incredibly long, right? Because plant matter isn't dangerous. It just sort of goes soggy and a bit whatever. But raw meat, right, can become rancid and can become, all these, sorry, not rancid, that's fats, but it can become putrid, right? Putrefaction, the rotting, So it's a much shorter gut system to get that out there quickly. Okay. Now, obviously, it's getting processed and digested along the way. So that's not going to just be that raw meat, but anything nasty, because there's nasty things in raw meat, that's going to disappear. But raw meat is what a cat is supposed to eat primarily. Okay, now what does that actually look like then? Because when we think about meat, you and I will think of muscle meat, right? We'll think of a chicken breast or a steak or something that we might eat as humans. But there's actually 4 types of meat, if you want to put it that way, protein. So we've got muscle meat, organ meat, hearts, livers, kidneys, brains, spleens, all these things. Bones, yes, bones, right? And then all the collagen stuff, so skin, feathers, fur, scales, connective tissues, ligaments, tendons, fascia, all of that stuff. And cats need all 4. So when a cat hunts a mouse, right, they're eating all of the mouse. Now, they might leave the gallbladder. They usually do. But apart from that, they eat the whole thing, right? So they're getting their ratio of these 4 things. When a lion goes and hunts a zebra, and the ratio is the same. How much muscle meat is on a zebra body? How much muscle meat is on a mouse body? That's the same. It's about 50%. How much collagen is in this animal? About 30%. How much is in a mouse? About 30%. How much do you see? So we can very easily get a very simple, biologically sound answer to the question, what is a cat supposed to eat? We look at this, and all of their system and tells us raw meat. And then we say, okay, so what does raw meat mean? What does that look like? And we see that, well, what do they eat in the wild? Yeah, that's what they should be eating.
Yes.
They're not cooking, right? They're not gathering up biscuits or eating fruit or any of these other things. They're eating raw meat, and it's all of the bits. So there's our answer. And it's without prejudice. It's just like, what does science tell us? So my summary with that is just to say, this is completely without prejudice, without sort of any political agenda or any of those kinds of things. This is what biology says. Every animal eats raw food, right? We're the only people, right? Raw food. That's what nature gives us, and that's what they eat, and that's what they thrive on. Okay, so we know, first of all, it's going to be raw. It's going to be species appropriate. So what do we look at from here to here, and what are the clues that tell us what goes in? So that's number 2. And then number 3, what's the composition of that? And so when a mouse and a zebra have the same body composition in terms of those 4 types of protein, then we can say that's what should be ideally in the bowl of a kitty that we're feeding, that same 4 type of protein composition. Now, we also need to obviously give them water, and then we might want to look at supplements, and we might want to do some, other bits and pieces, but that builds your basic bowl. And if you do that, you can't go wrong. Like if you just did that and nothing else, you would just see welfare, health, and longevity go up. You can't avoid it. So, it's even the person who just wants to do one thing or the smallest thing or something like that and doesn't want to go all the 9 yards and do everything and the 7 pillars and everything, right? Just do that.
I like it. So I guess we should probably list what your 7 pillars are.
We
So
can, if you want. Yeah.
Yes.
So let me just recap very quickly then on the food, because the way I teach it usually is to say, introduce, as we've just done there, what is species appropriate diet. Okay, and again, it's the science, it's not me having an opinion, right? And then so we have what I call the basic goal. Okay, and then water is really important because cats are a desert species biologically. Okay, so that's where they mostly spend their time. So they're water conservers. They don't drink a lot of free water the way a dog does because there's not a lot of free water in the desert. So they get their moisture from their food, which is why the blood part is important, right? A mouse is still also blood, which is also protein, I'll add, right? But that's where they're getting their moisture. So if we give them dry food, they become really dehydrated for as long as you're giving dry food. Like that's where we get chronic kidney disease and all sorts of other things coming up in cats, is because they live their entire life compromised on moisture. From human science, we know that when moisture drops, you get closer to death. Cadavers and like dead bodies in hospitals are, they're studied, and dead people have 50% water. Doesn't matter what disease they died of, they're low in water. When babies are born, they have 90%. They're brand new, they're full of life. They're just, anytime we can push moisture content up in the body is a good thing for health and longevity. Okay, so water, we can't neglect that for cats. So I always add water to their food as well as having the water bowl there. And there's lots of, I can dive really into, I can do a whole 6 hours on water if you wanted me to. But the key take home things are, make sure you filter the water. If you do nothing else with your water, filter it, because it is so full of junk that comes out of the tap and whatever. And our cats are very, very, they're like the canary in the coal mine when it comes to this. They're very, sensitive to this. So we need to protect them. So even a cheap little water filter is going to be better than nothing. Please do that for your cats. If you can go higher up in reverse osmosis and other things, then that's even better. But that's really key. And that will do enormous amounts of that, and the collagen will largely stop a cat from developing chronic kidney disease. It's a deficiency of collagen in their bodies that they require, and it's a deficiency of water that causes their kidneys to be overworked and then start to die early. And then kidney, unfortunately, is the one organ in the body that we can't regenerate. Once it's lost, it's lost. So it's really key to protect that. So basic bowl, make sure you have additional water going in. And then there's supplements. So if you wanted to do toppers, supplements, and things that are whole foods like eggs and sardines, that's amazing. If you want to get specific brands and fill the nutritional gaps or optimize up, and I've got charts and things for that, lists for people, then that's also a thing. But cats have 41 daily essential nutrients. Okay, and so it'd be a real pain in the butt if you had to have this list of 41 every time you fed your cat to make sure you've weighed off, 4.5 micrograms of this, and it's driving you insane, right? So I simplify that to people. I say, listen, if you do this basic bowl and these 3 or 4 supplements here, that is absolutely belt and braces, everything that a cat needs to thrive for a really long time. And it's simplified it down to the absolute bare essentials. So that's nutrition. So that's number 1. There's a lot more to dive into that when I teach it in full, but that's the real kind of bottom line on that. So then we go into the other pillars, and we have detoxification. So I talked before about what you put into the machine gives you the longevity and health of the result. You've also got to get the trash out. Imagine if you never took the trash out of your home. Like, it would be revolting. It wouldn't be sanitary, right? So we have to do that. Yes, the body has 6 amazing detoxification pathways. But unfortunately, we live in the most toxic world that there's ever been in the history of the universe. And so it's more of a burden on our bodies and our cats' bodies than it's ever been before. And if we don't take proactive preventative steps with that, you get too much buildup in the body, which causes disease. So it's a really simple thing to do, but it's life-changing. And life, I'm not going to say life doubling, but certainly life extending, to add detoxification as part of your basic standard care. And then number 3 is the microbiomes, right? That's a really big buzzword the last 10 years. Microbiomes has gone like, crazy. So we talk about the gut microbiome, and that's really important. It's, again, these are species specific to the animal and how they're going to digest their food, but there's also the oral microbiome, critically important, especially for heart health and some other things. Skin microbiome, we've also found microbiomes inside the spine. So I don't get into all those little weird random ones, but I really look at this too for the cats quite a lot, because dental disease is rife, and it's not a little separate little box from the rest of the body. When you've got problems in the mouth, you've got problems everywhere, and they're serious. But it's so easy to look after mouths. And I'm not talking about brushing their teeth. They hate it. You don't have the time. You hate it. So don't do it. There's a better way. But that comes under this third pillar of the microbiome. So that's number 3. Number 4, movement, exercise, and alignment. So that's making sure our animals maintain their muscle mass, their strength. They've got to be able to perform as an animal, partly just to enjoy their life and do their day, but it's also protective of everything else in their body, including their skeletal structure, right? So I talk about alignment and things as well. So if you don't have the muscles, how are you going to do that? If your nails for a dog are too long, how are you going to have alignment correctly? If you don't have chiropractic work done periodically, especially if you've taken a fall, like dogs going after frisbees, cats falling out of windows, this can impinge on the vagus nerve, right, which comes down from the head, splits, goes either side of the neck, and then goes back into the body and innervates every organ. But if the vagus nerve is twisted, like a cable, electric cable, right, or the hose from the garden, when it's twisted, it doesn't go through. It's right. So now we don't have electrical messages. We don't have neuronal signals going through the body properly. So now things aren't performed. So you can see there's just a whole lot of stuff to unpack just with that one.
Yes.
Number 5, I could talk about natural environments, and this is usually a bit more important for a cat than a dog, because so many of our kitties are inside cats. Okay, now there's arguments, and I don't take positions on these or tell you you're right or you're wrong, but I just say if you do have an indoor kitty, especially if you're in an apartment and they're up above ground level, right, then there's a bunch of stuff that you want to be able to bring into their life to replace, or to, replace, but replace as naturally as possible what they're missing from that exposure in the natural world. And the natural world is designed to look after our animals. The natural world is full of healing powers, and I'm talking about 5 areas. So atmosphere, geosphere, hydrosphere, solar sphere, and biosphere. So this is what makes up planet Earth. So these 5, they call them spheres, right? And so each one of those is packed full of healing and regenerative properties for living creatures, you and me and our pets. So if we're separated from nature, right, then we don't have access to those things, and so health goes down. So we need to reintroduce those where an animal is separated from the natural world. So that's pillar number 5. Wrapping up, because it's taken a minute to say all of this. Number 6 is hormonal health, and that's a really big deal, because we meddle with hormones in our pets often quite early on with spay and neuter programs. And again, this is a big controversial arguments. There's pros and cons for stuff. So I just inform people about what's possible. But if you spay and neuter an animal, well, that's okay, say cat. So spay and neuter a cat before they reach 12 months of age, you have mucked up their hormonal endocrine system. Okay. Hormonal systems work like an orchestra. You have different sections of the orchestra that are all performing in harmony with each other and in balance. So the conductor's there, making sure that everybody's heard at the right level. It all sounds beautiful and works together. If you suddenly take a chunk of them out, which is what we do with the sex hormones, we say, right, they're gone because we've just done a spay or a neuter. Now the other orchestra members are like, okay, well, we don't hear anything from them anymore, so we'll play a bit louder, and then we're going to have to compensate for that. And we don't sound like that, but and you start to see, and it's now disharmonious. That's what happens in the body. So it's not just spay and neutering that happens. If you've got a very hyper stressed animal, you've got anxieties in animals, if you've got phobias in animals, if you've got poor welfare, cortisol and adrenaline. What are they? Well, they're hormones too, right? So they start going up and getting out of control. So it's rebalancing and putting that orchestra back together in the animal. And then we don't have that, thyroid. That's another endocrine thing. So things can go out of balance and become a big problem pretty fast. So balance up front, we're protecting them. And then
Yes.
finally, there's the mental health side of things, which is really the fun bit in terms of that's where we do games and play and training and socialization and enrichment and a whole bunch of stuff to make life really worth living, to make that rewarding connection between you and your pet stronger. How can you communicate and understand each other better? How can you build trust? How can you fill an animal's day so it becomes meaningful and enjoyable for them, rather than just survival? Because there's living and there's thriving, right? So mental health is on that bit there.
Yes. Yes. So I like the whole seven pillar thing because you're really looking at the whole animal and not just one aspect of it, and how every single pillar of that, how they work together.
They do. I mean, this is holistic in every possible version of the word.
Yes, yes, exactly. I actually had a call with a holistic vet last week and told them that Charlie was neutered at 6 weeks old. And he's like, wow. And he's lived to be 15? That's amazing. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was I so that was my first exposure to that. I'm aware of the pros and cons to each. And especially when I get emails from people who want to breed their brother and sister cat, I do wish that those cats had been spayed and neutered early. So there are situations like that that I see the earlier benefit far outweighs anything else. So if I have a cat, or I guess what I want to ask is, what are some situations, like normal situations, that people reach out to you for? Like, can you share a success story or like common things that you usually hear?
So I get a lot of clients with dental problems, a lot of
Mm,
clients with gut issues, behavior issues. That could be things like phobias. My cat is running away from the vacuum cleaner, or my cat just started to bite all the time and become aggressive, or weeing where they didn't use, so that kind of stuff. Um, Dental, gut, behavior, kidney. Where I've already touched on. I mean, chronic kidney disease is the number one clinical cause of death of cats, and it's almost. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but it's almost completely preventable, and that is something that I really, really wish cat parents would know, so that they can do the things up front that are so simple to do. This is not expensive. This is not complicated. You don't need a PhD to do any of that stuff. It's just being mindful in the way that you provide care for your animals, right? So that we don't get to the point where the vet says, okay, the kidney markers have come back and we're looking at, is it thyroid or is it kidney? We don't know. We have to do some extra tests because, of course, they tangle up with each other, which is also a pain when you're trying to medicate and kind of hold that condition, to prevent it from getting worse. I'd much rather that people just didn't ever have to deal with that and the cats could just carry on as normal. Because unfortunately, some of the other stuff that comes up then is, oh, okay, they got kidney disease, right? They've reduced their protein. It's like, you cannot biologically reduce a cat's protein and expect them to heal and survive. Like, just end of story. So that, unfortunately, there's science as to why they're saying that, right? But there's better things that we should be doing, and we shouldn't even be looking at that until at least stage 3 or stage 4 in the progression. Let's hope we never get there with that stuff. But what I'm saying is, do these things up front, then we don't have to get there. But that's another one that comes up fairly frequently with my clients.
okay. And is it tartar, or what's the teeth issue?
So it used to be that vets back in the day would only see dental issues in dogs and cats 10 years old and above, that sort of thing, so after a lifetime of, not a lifetime, but like a good chunk of time of wear and tear and just not being clean, because nobody used to toothbrush their pets back in the day either, but so these things, and now we see a huge percentage. I forget the exact numbers, so don't quote me, but something in the order of 50% of pets by the time they're 2, they've got dental problems, right? I mean, this is chalk and cheese where we were, right? And so begs the question, what the heck's going wrong? It's not like their teeth have suddenly, become useless, weak little rubber things, right? We're doing something. The animals are
Yes.
they're not getting dental issues, right? If they break a tooth, sure, they've got a dental issue, right? But we're not talking about breaks. We're talking about infections and bad breath and tartar and abscesses and all that kind of thing. And so what's causing that is here's how it goes. So you eat carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are sticky, they stick to your teeth. Carbohydrates are also become sugar. If they're not already sugar ones, they become sugar in the system. Bacteria love that. So bacteria in your mouth, whether you like it or not, yeah, this is the oral microbiome. And this oral microbiome is extraordinarily beneficial when it's the right species of bacteria and the right colonies. And it's ultra specific. There are individual microbiomes for every single tooth that's going to vary according to whether you're here or here or here or here in the mouth. There's also the tongue microbiome, the back of the throat microbiome, the left cheek microbiome, the right cheek. Like, it's incredibly discrete and specific. There's no way we can ever understand fully all of that information. The good news is we don't need to, so long as what we're doing in management and protection is the right thing, and then the body just does it normally, okay? But you
Yes.
carbohydrates, they stick to the teeth. The bacteria are already there. They say, excellent, sugar, carbohydrates, that's what I thrive on. So now I'm going to consume that. I'm going to poop out my bacterial waste that's now going to be in your mouth and your saliva. I'm going to hide myself behind a film of biofilm. This is a protective layer. This is why we have to scrub and use abrasion when we're doing oral care, because you can't just go like that and think, oh, it's gone, right? Because this biofilm is like a lacquer. They all hang out behind the lacquer. So you got to scrape that off and then get them gone after that, right? It's a two-step process. So the species of bacteria go nuts for this stuff, right? So every time we're feeding a carbohydrate, which is a kibble, which is a processed tin food, which is a pouch, which is the majority of cat food is at least 50% carbohydrate, because that's how you make a kibble in the first place, okay? And it's, those chunks that you look at in the pouch and you think, oh, that looks meaty, and then you cut in half, and it's like, oh no, it looks like cake, right? It is cake, it's carbohydrate. So all of that stuff is sticking, and then it's once it sticks there for a while, it's plaque, and then it becomes tartar. It hardens, it becomes like concrete, because it's behind the biofilm, and it's getting, and all this processes. Now there's other stuff going on in the back, fascinating stuff, but each tooth has these microtubules inside of it. So think of that as little tiny capillaries that flush cleaning fluid around in the tooth. So your body naturally cleans your teeth from the inside out, as well as what we do on the outside to get rid of stuff. The problem is, once your mouth biome becomes out of balance in the evil side of things, that flushing process reverses. So before, it took nice clean fluids from your body and washed the tooth, and then the excess was in, right? Now it's doing the other way. So the tooth is pulling fluid from your mouth into the tooth. So if you've got a gungy mouth, you're now putting gungy water all the way through your tooth. I'm using simple language, obviously different stuff than that, but I mean, that's the process. So you're exacerbating tooth decay inside and out of each individual tooth. The other problem that we have is blood comes to the heart, right? And it then goes to the lungs to be oxygen, well, but the heart and the lungs are oxygenating the blood, right? And then it goes to the head to power the brain, to make the eyes work, to nourish here, right? So it's nourishing all that. It's now depleted of oxygen and has to go back to the heart to be re-oxygenated and re-pumped around. It's picked up all the gunk from your mouth because the mucous membranes of your mouth are so close to the surface, which is why, if you've got someone who's having a seizure or diabetic thing, you just literally honey on their gums or under their tongue, and that sugar, that glucose is in their system like within a couple of seconds. Like, it's really fast, and that's how you can revive someone in those. That's because the mouth is absorbing everything really quickly. The amount of blood supply to the mouth. That's also why when you bite your mouth or burn your tongue, it heals so much faster than it's something on your outside of your skin, right? It's the blood supply density, richness. So when it's that accessible to receive blood, it's also that accessible to pollute all of that blood, and now it's going to go to your heart. So what they find in human patients and in animal patients, whenever they've got coronary heart disease, when they've got other things that are wrong with the heart attacks, mitral valve problems, all the rest of it, they look and they see, and it's the same bacteria. They're like, it's all oral microbiome bacteria in the heart. So again, by looking after the teeth, you're going to be looking after your heart. So heart murmurs and all those other progressive degenerative diseases of the heart can be offset to some extent by the teeth. So I don't even know how we got on that, but you can see I can just rabbit hole and just, but it's so important. And so here's the thing that you really want to know, right? Because it's like, okay, so this is a big deal. We want to protect the teeth. We want to protect the more, right? How do we do it? Bones is the answer. Bones and hard collagen. So
hard collagen, is that what you said?
Yeah, so we have hard
Okay.
collagen in our body and we have soft collagen in our body. Okay, this is another one of the reasons why it's so important to filter the water, because we want to get rid of that fluoride. We do not want neurotoxin fluoride in cats' water. We don't want it in our water either, but we don't want it in our cats' water. Fluoride is neurotoxic, but it also has a deformity effect on collagen in our body. So collagen is the #1 protein in our body. There are multiple different types, but they're just loosely say hard and soft. So hard would be things like teeth and bones, but there are other things that are like scales on a fish. They're fairly hard, you know. So, and then there's soft collagen. So as we think about, you know, faces and wrinkles and connective tissues and making us flexible and all that stuff, right? So fluoride will make hard collagen soft. And that's what in people who, in populations of people who live in a very naturally high fluorided water, that's what the minerals in the soil in their area, their teeth actually go black and really brittle, and you can go like that, right? And their teeth will just crumble away because it's turned that hard collagen into something that's no longer proper collagen. You also see those people having massive hunchbacks because their collagen's been being manipulated with this fluoride, and you don't see it in the next village or the next town where the water is more normal, you know. So
Yeah.
scientific studies are pretty conclusive on that. But so filter your water, please. I know I've forgotten your question.
Well, I was asking about what hard collagen is, and you answered that.
Oh
I
yes,
don't.
because I'm giving the magical answer. How do we keep our cat's teeth clean? So bones, neck bones are really good because they're round with little spines on them. They're called processes, but they're round and they're all connected with loads of like gristle and nasty bits that we would always spit out of our food, right? But for a cat, this is ideal. I'm going to tell you why. Firstly, you've got bones for the minerals. Bones will then do the scrubbing. I talked before about you need the abrasion, right? So that's going to do the scrubbing of the teeth. You've also got minerals in there, and you've also got bone marrow in there. Bone marrow is really rich. It's full of stem cells. It's phenomenal protein for the body and very regenerative and healing. Yeah, then you've got the connective tissue. You've got those discs and the connective stuff, and that's the collagen. Again, it's going to do that scrubbing of the tooth, but then give you the collagen nutritionally. So there's a mechanical side and there's a nutrition side to this, and there's also the regenerative bit with the stem cells. So it's a 3-in-1 beautiful thing, plus the minerals. Like, it's so good. So you can buy chicken necks, duck necks, turkey necks, right? Or you can go for tails. So like ox tails are usually available fairly readily. They might be a bit chunky for a cat, but you can always try. But similar concept, because the tail is just the other end of the spine, and that's what we're talking about. These neck and tail bones have that same structure and function format to them. Here's the thing: the cat's tooth, they're you know how they've got the canine teeth, right? The grabby, snabby ones, right? They are specially flattened. And here's why: because cats kill from the back of the neck.
Mm.
And they're very humane hunters. So dogs are pretty brutal. Dogs are flank killers. They'll go and pull the underbelly apart. They'll hamstring the animal. It's you know, the animal's suffering in the process. A cat just comes along and goes, and it's game over. You don't even feel anything because you're now paralyzed, because that tooth was designed to go straight through the spinal cord and cut it like that. Painless, instant, painless, fast. So the necks are really good because it's a perfect fit for cat teeth. So it's the perfect toothbrush to keep their mouth clean, right? And this is a really enrichment kind of a product to give to them as well. Take it outside because you don't necessarily want like a neck rolling around the floor, but take it outside. That's them for the next 20 minutes minimum, right? Crunch
Yes.
away at that, working at it, and every single strange angle, shape, and whatever is getting to the back of the teeth. It's getting around the corners there. It's doing every tooth in the mouth 1,000 times better than you and the toothbrush will ever be.
Yes.
Thing is, just go to the butcher shop. They're usually about 10p, 10 cents. I mean, cheap as chips because nobody else wants a chicken neck.
Yes. Yes. I love the chicken neck thing. And I think about a lot of the readers on Floppycats who have been told that kibble, if you stop feeding kibble, then your cat's teeth won't be clean. You've already explained why that's not going to work, but it is such a falsity that's out there with veterinarians, especially that they talk about how kibble will clean teeth. Can you comment any more on that other than what you've already said about carbohydrates and microbiome?
Yeah, it's a really great question that you bring up. And there's a grain of truth to it. Like a lot of these myths come out of somewhere, right? Someone's not trying to be malicious. They've taken a truth and extrapolated, but then it becomes like Chinese whispers and it changes its meaning and it becomes a falsehood, right? So what we have is the importance of having something hard and abrasive in the mouth. But the problem is with kibble, as I said, it is minimum 50% carbohydrate and the rest of it's pretty trash as well, if I'm really going to be brutally honest with you. Like, I mean, when I did my deep dive into what's really the kibble, like the ingredients, the process, the byproducts, the like, it's just when I speak bluntly about it, I just say this is a plate of poison. There's no two ways about it. And unfortunately, we just don't hear enough about that being the science, that being, again, this is not political or, like I don't have an agenda here except animal welfare. That's my agenda, right? And when I look at biology, that it tells me that this is wrong, this is not species appropriate food. And if only people could know that from day one, I don't think anyone would choose to use something that they knew was going to be harmful. But we don't have
Yes.
information out there in the zeitgeist to say that. So we all do, and I used to do it too, right? Until I learned better. And then I changed. I was like, oh my gosh, talk about chalk and cheese, talk about like game changer, right? But the truth nugget of that was something hard and abrasive. But if you use a natural product, right, then you don't have acrylamides and ages and all of these nasty carcinogens that come out of the superheating process. You don't have any carbohydrate in there. You don't have any waste products from the original animal source because because they take a lot of putrefied meat and nasty things off the carcasses before they go into human consumption, and that becomes pet food, right? So it's already been rejected from a health point of view. So a neck that has gone through the process of being human grade, which is why your butcher shop can stock it, right, means that it's clean, means it's disease free, it's healthy, it's fresh, it's all of the things that a cat would want to have, because cats don't go around foraging dead bodies, right? They're not like a dog that eats scavengers, a carcass in the desert for 4 days or some roadkill, right? They're like, it's either get hunted with my paws and eaten or it's ignored, right? Cats are fastidious. So let's give them that fresh. And we know that neck is going to be human grade, it's going to be fresh, it's going to be clean, it's going to be all those things, especially if you can get an organic one, then it's also good on the inside because that bird ate some good food to become So, and that will give you the abrasion that you need, right? But like I said, it's that 3-for-1 because now we're also getting, so the mechanics are there, but now we're getting nutrition and really top quality nutrition, clean nutrition, species appropriate nutrition, all that stuff. And with the bone marrow and the collagen, you're getting regenerative things that help heal the cat and optimize and protect them in the future. No kibble on earth has ever been able to make that claim because it cannot. But every single neck doesn't need to have a label on it that says that because it's natural and it already does it. So that's where it comes from. But
Yes.
and the same with those like dentistics and other treats that you can get that are teeth cleaning treats and things. Again, look at the ingredients list, and it may not tell you because laws are different for pet food, right? If it's feed grade, you don't have to disclose all the ingredients. If you add up the percentages of what's on your cat food, you'll notice it doesn't come to 100. Yeah, it usually comes to something like 40, 50%, because I don't need to tell you that the other percentage is carbohydrates. You know, we're in human food, it's bound by law. You must disclose all of these things, right? But with pet food, you see, oh, these 5 things, and it only adds up to 40%. That's weird. Yeah, because the 60% is carbohydrate. So when you look at that, you can see that these products are all commercial. They're mostly fake and they're full of junk that is no good for a cat's biology, right? They might think, oh, it tastes good and it might be fun to whatever. But if we're trying to deal holistically and give the best possible welfare, they just don't even get close to making the grade.
Yes. Wow. Okay. And you have a list of cat foods that you like, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something that I can link to in this interview and people can sign up to get that email to them?
Yeah, absolutely. So just
Okay.
to explain what that is, so this is a list of brands that I believe have met the top level quality, and that means many things. So food grade, like I said a second ago, is vastly different from feed grade. So all of these foods start out, they are food grade. So we know that there's quality control in there. We know that it's clean. We know that we can track which farm it came from in some cases. We know it's organic in some cases, but the base point is it's food grade. So we know that it's healthy to start with. Okay. And then there's some are on there that are raw, some are on there that are lightly cooked. Some are freeze dried, so you don't have any of the mess, or if you need cupboard, a stable food, right? Your freezer isn't very big, or you travel a lot, like you want to have probably freeze dried. It's more convenient, right? So there's lots of different options within that, but I've started out with things that are just going to be fabulous. So you can't make a mistake from that list. And then I've also given you a little bit of a price indication there as well. So if your cat is £10 or whatever, well, you can roughly work out how much is it going to cost per day, per week, per month, find out if that fits into your budget. So all of that's on the sheet, and then those links will just take you straight to the website as well. So it's super easy. Once you've got that, you can just read through and think, oh, that look at that one. Let me see, and then it'll take you there, and you can choose. So the companies don't know that I do that. We're not in a special agreement or anything. I'm looking again at the science of what it is, but it just means that pet parents who want to make a change don't have to then spend hours doing all of this research themselves. It's just all done on that document for you, and you can just pick one. What I will say,
Yes.
if you're looking at to change your cat's diet, please don't do it overnight, and please don't expect your cat to be able to do it fast. Okay,
Or
cats,
want to do it fast.
right? Cats are very different from dogs, and even in dogs, we prescribe trying to do it no faster than 2 weeks because we want to protect the gut system. Right? You know what it's like if you go and have a really rich, let's say, French dinner somewhere with sauces and creams and custards and like, right? You feel, well, oh golly, that was a bit much, right? Your tummy tells you the next day. So we don't want to do that to our pets. We want to go in slowly and then bring these percentages up of the good food and down of the old food until such time as we've come to full replacement. But let me add one more thing. I've got time to do so, and that is when cats have their critical learning period, which starts actually from 2 weeks and goes up to about 9 weeks. It's really young. It's really, really early in cats. They discover in that time frame what is food. What in this whole thing qualifies as what do I eat? And then how do I process that? How do I do it? So the mama cat will, in the wild, go and show them how to do hunting, and there'll be a whole variety of different things. And the cats will learn that there's lots of food out there. This is a food, this is a food, this is a food. That's not though, but this is a food. Right. And they learn how to work with that. What we often find is when we're breeding cats in domestic environments, right, they're weaned and given kibble. And so they know that I can eat milk and I can eat kibble. There's no other food in the world. Period. End of story. Game over. That's it. There's food. There's milk, and there's no more milk because I don't even know where my mum is anymore. Right. So that's off the top. Right. And so kibble. That's all I know. That's the only thing that's food. So we put food. We put fabulous, perfect, species appropriate food in front of a cat, and they go, "Well, not food. I know what I'm supposed to do with this thing, but like it's still here. Like because I don't know to eat it. They don't know that it's safe. And cats are particularly cautious about food because they're sensitive, like I said before, the canary in the coal mine. If it's not ultra fresh, they're not going to have it. right? The same their litter box. If it's not pristine and sparkling, they're not going to go and use it. Like, they are fastidiously clean and beautiful animals. So make sure that when you're introducing food, that you go slowly, but you also teach them that this is food. If they're not automatically responding to it, it's because to them it's like, well, that's that's a phone. I don't eat that. I don't eat that. This is a hard drive. I don't eat that. So why would I? They don't know that it's food. So you can cheat and do some things. You can warm it up slightly, because the warmer things get, the more the molecules become activated, and now we're attracting the nose. Okay. You can put things like butter on it. Butter makes everything taste better, right? But a cat's tongue, right, doesn't have sweet receptors the way ours does. And its protein ones, or salty ones, or however you want to do it, are very, very specific to amino acid distinguishing. So we can't distinguish, oh my gosh, I just ate some leucine, some arginine, some valine. So no, we just go, it's salty or sweet, right? But a cat can go, oh yeah, I'm going after that because it's really rich in taurine and I need some of that, right? They can tell individual amino acids. So we can encourage them into eating food by putting amino acid things like butter, like eggs, like sardines, like fish oil, all those things that are healthy for them, right? But are going to help them realize food underneath that you're trying to introduce them to is also on those levels. So there's ways that we can sort of hack a cat's cautious self-protecting behaviors to teach them that other foods are safe to do. And so, of course, I can explain a lot of that in detail and work with someone through that process. I've had a client, it took them a year to get to the other side of changing food, because the cat was just like, nope, I'm a cat, I know better, and that's not food, right? But we got there, right? And if you need to cheat along the way, to do things like get a handful of kibble, crush it down in your pestle and mortar until it's powder, have your bowl of beautiful nutrients that you want them to eat, and sprinkle some kibble on top. Again, it's tricking them into eating it. And here's why: because all of that kibble food is laced with addictive properties, right? There are whole engineering departments, cat food and dog food companies, that are designed to create these things called palatants. Palatants are making rancid, fetid, putrid meat, which is what they've got in the processing of making pet food, right? And cats know this. When they take the palatants out of the kibble, like they leave that ingredient out and they produce it, cats walk away. They do not go near it, because their nose and their tongue tells them that it's bad food. It's off. It's dangerous, right? So they put these palatants in, makes it taste really good, like MSG in your food, right? So, oh, my tongue's just come alive. That's so full of flavor and delicious, right? But it's also made to be addictive. So that's why it's really hard to wean cats off, because they're like little cocaine addicts, right? And so when we introduce them with food, they're like, yeah, it's got no flavor. Well, I'm bored. I know, but we can change their palate over time. Their palate will develop and change and adapt over time. But sometimes we need to cheat to help them get there. So sprinkling some kibble on top will be the way to get them into their eating their crack, and then we phase that out. But now they've learned that the good stuff underneath. And once they start eating the good stuff, their body knows, right? You've ever been sick and you just felt horrible? You felt sluggish and heavy and lethargic and boring and because you feel bad, right? You feel bad, and you need to get better. But if you didn't know what medicine to take, you wouldn't necessarily get better. But then someone comes along and brings you some chicken soup, and the next day you're like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. You like that chicken soup. You're like, I'm going to have a bit more of that. That's what they're like. They suddenly go, oh my gosh, I have this energy. My aches and pains have gone. My brain is clear. Or whatever it is but they feel that difference, and they learn through association. They go, well, I'm definitely going to have some more of that food. So once we crack them, kind of thing, it's usually an acceleration through to a great result. But it can take some time to get there, because they're so conservative and so protective, because they're so fastidious.
Yes. Yes. And while you were talking about how it has that kibble sprayed with the addictive stuff, reminded me there are lots of readers who are worried about feeding raw because, what if there's bacteria or pathogens or whatever? And that's another thing that I've seen with my cats. One has passed, as you know, but they've only been fed raw for 2.5 years now, and if the raw that I served them was bad because, I had it one more day in the refrigerator and shouldn't have, they just simply wouldn't eat it. And then I would finally stick my nose down into it and be like, oh, that's why you guys didn't eat it because it's bad. So they do know.
They do. They
Yeah.
absolutely do. So the skill then becomes, what's the distinguishing line between a cat that's naive and doesn't understand that this is food, or is still being conservative and cautious because they don't feel safe to take a leap of faith, versus the cat that's telling you, no, no, this is bad. There's no way I'm eating that on God's green earth. You know what I mean? So we need to then look at some other things to sometimes tease that out. But that's why they're going to be, refusing something. So we can,
Yes.
if a cat is refusing it, it really does behoove as well to take a minute to investigate, is this past it, is this gone. And if you've got a dog, I mean, to be fair, this is not a welfare breach, but if you've got a dog and the cat food is turned and the cat's like, no, it's not going to do that, you can give it to your dog and the dog's fine. Right? Because they eat 4-day-old stinky rotten roast, right? Their stomach acid can handle that, but a cat's going to go, no, I don't want it. So it doesn't have,
Yes.
um
Yes.
uh, but if you don't have another cat in the household, well, then you probably are just going to trash that one. But it's just then, little and often is the rule of thumb as well with cats, because again, they're hunting something smaller than themselves. They're not, your cat isn't going out and catching the big neighborhood dog, right? It's catching the mouse that lives under the shed. So little and often is their meal size, portion, pattern, whatever. So you don't
Yes.
have a whole big bowl of meat down and wait for it to go nasty in the sun. Just do a tablespoon, and then
Yes.
hours later do another tablespoon. And then chances are nothing's going to be left behind to get a bit aged and nasty looking. And like I said at the start, the stomach acid concentration is higher in cats and dogs than it is for us. So those bacteria, of course, there's bacteria in raw food. Like we know that, and I'm not going to pretend that there isn't, but I'm telling you that a cat is protected from that. And if they're not protected from that because the food has gone bad, their nose is going to tell them they're going to walk away. So you've got sort of two safety mechanisms built into the system. That means you can very seldom go wrong. And I'm not going to tell you that it never happens, but it's so rare. Like the number of recalls that you get on pet food, where they've got, they suddenly discovered that there's pentobarbital in the cat food because they used, deceased pets as part of the process, right? They've got to do a recall on that because that's the euthanasia drug. So you don't want to feed them, so they're going to do a recall. That doesn't happen in raw food. The number of statistics of pet food recalls and pet injury from food, kibble way outlies anything else, or commercial highly processed food way outweighs the statistics for raw food injury, right? A gut upset or whatever, right? It's
Yes.
nothing
Yes.
without some risk. But when you look at like 0.001 something percent, right, versus whatever that is, you can see it's safe, it's natural, it's effective, it's the way that's meant to be, it's biologically appropriate. The whole gut is telling you that's how it is. Like there's just no argument for anything other than raw as the gold standard. Doesn't mean you have to do that, right? I'm talking from a scientific point. That is the gold standard of what we can do for welfare. Now you might choose not to because you don't like dealing with raw food. So I would suggest, well, why not freeze dried? It's just like pouring kibble, like they go in the bowl and you can add some water or not, So there's ways to help the pet parent feel comfortable, right? And if you can't do raw for whatever other, lightly cooked. Lightly cooked has got amazing health properties in it versus highly processed. So you don't have to go for 10 out of 10, but you can do 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or 7 out of 10, and you're going to be vastly better than what you're going to have with your ultra processed carbohydrate junk that no cat needs. And like I said at the start, until we know this, until someone explains this and we understand, we don't know because the industry tells us this is cat food, and we go okay, and they go, here's a study to say this is really good. This is a breed appropriate one, which is you see that in dogs and cats, and it's like, well, that's a fallacy because there's no breed appropriate. A breed is the same species.
Yes.
Tail and hair was different, like it's the same species, right? Which is why I was saying
Yes.
even a domestic cat versus a wild cat, the biology is the same, the diet's the same, species appropriate collection is the same, right? So we don't need to
Yes.
breed specific on stuff. The reason that they say breed specific stuff is because in the breeding process, they've made the genetics of those animals weaker and they're prone to certain health conditions. So then the companies say supplements in that might help with that, then we might offset that thing. But my argument is if you're feeding real food and supplementing correctly at the start, you're never going to get that disease process in the first place, and you're going to have it all natural. So vastly better, again, from a welfare and a science point of view, and for the experienced life for your pet, than to give them low quality food that's going to give them dehydration, likely to build in, and then you've got an artificial supplement in there that's really probably not terribly bioavailable. It didn't protect them from getting it. It just, so it's all a bit of a magical myth. And you don't need to go down that pathway.
Right. Yes. Yes. This has been awesome. I feel like I could keep listening to you for hours and keep asking questions like, oh, okay, that and then that. Um, so thank you. And then hopefully this will inspire somebody that has a specific problem that they really need to deep dive into with you to reach out as well so they can learn more. That, I mean, that's the other thing is that I find that the more I deep dive into this, the more I understand my biology and how things work as well. And you start thinking about, should I eat that Reese's peanut butter cup or not? So, yes, that's
Well,
what I learned from these as well.
here's the nice thing with that is yes, biology, like we say a cat is a cat, but biology is biology, right? And we're a mammal and so is a cat. So that means our systems are very similar, right? But what's the same is the foundational principles, the rules of law about what governs biology and how does it work. Those are the same, right? And then it's the specifics that are different. So I'll tell you that my teeth are not like a cat's, right? I've got molars here, my front ones are not so stabby. So that tells me that there's different food choices that I can make to be best equipped for thriving, right? But the foundation of teeth will give you clues. Part of the digestive system will tell you what species appropriate. How does my body work in assimilating food? All those principles are the same, right? So when we come to preventing diseases, healing from diseases, regenerating the body, and extending lifespan, all of this stuff all goes together, right, with those 7 pillars that I talked about. And it's the same whether it's you and me or whether it's our pets. So I actually, when I was doing the science and learning all this stuff, I tested it all out on me first. I was like, let's see if that works. Like it's one thing to read the paper, it's another thing to have the practical experience, right? Or to say,
Yes.
I've just realized how important minerals are, right? But minerals are largely not bioavailable. So this is a problem. So how do I get really bioavailable? So I did a deep dive and I found an amazing product that does all of your minerals with one thing, completely bioavailable, all completely natural. And the health of animals when you put them on that just goes like this. So it's like, right, I'm going to do it on me, right, to see what it feels like. And it's perfectly safe to do so because this is a product that is safe for animals and human. Because again, biology is biology. It's like vitamin C, like it's safe for every animal. So when you're talking about the daily essential nutrients and the health products and things like that, they are across the board. And so I've changed what I do with my collagen. I've changed what I do with my water. I changed what I do with my grounding and natural light and with my chiropractic alignment. Like all of these things that I learned about for the animals' sake to improve their welfare, right? I started applying to my life. And then people are like, oh,
Yes.
you look a bit younger than I last saw you, or when was the last time you got sick? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. I mean, so these things work. They work in our animals
Yes.
every day. In fact, I have the biggest problem in my business is that my patients graduate. They get well and they stop seeing me. So I'm just
Yes.
like, okay, that's perfect, right? Now I just need to let some more people know that there's a chance to speak with me, and but they come out the other end of that process solved, healed, fixed.
Yes.
I'm not a magician. I'm not claiming, and I don't heal, I don't diagnose and prescribe. I'm not a vet. I'm not working with medicine, drugs, and all that kind of stuff. I'm literally imparting knowledge that says, hey, did you know how important the microbiome is? Hey, did you know how important it is to give a neck to your cat's for their cat's teeth? Do you know how important it is to filter your water? And this is why. So I'm giving information. People can take from that as much or as little as they want and apply it to their life because everyone's life is different. routines,
Yes.
budget, lifestyle, culture, like it doesn't. So this is information to empower you, use it how you want, but I guarantee something's going to be good as a result of implementing it. And the more you implement, the bigger it gets. But like I said, even just one thing, even just changing the diet at the front end, the first pillar, nutrition, species appropriate nutrition, you will see excess weight disappear, excess inflammation disappear, mouth issues disappear, skin issues disappear, gut issues disappear. Like all of this stuff just vanishes because you're not fueling the problem, you're supplying the animal with what it basically needs. So
Yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I will include a link to your website as well as a link to where people can sign up to get that list from you if they're interested. Anything else that I've missed or that you'd like to cover? I mean, we could go on, but
we could talk forever, but I mean, those are probably the best places to start. Having that cat food list just gives you, as I said, you can't make a wrong decision from that. I've vetted them for you. I've done the work. Pick something, go slow, try it. If you want my help with that, you can reach out and have one of these calls and take the opportunity to spend half an hour with me and I can talk you through and give you a game plan. If you then want to continue to work and do more, we can do that. If that's all you need, then that's all you need. But that's probably the best place to start. I mean, there's my website, a little bit more information, but it's not, I don't have a whole lot of teaching material on there. Probably Instagram would be a better spot for that. So that's just Dr. Zoolittle.
okay.
Because there's some information there that could be helpful. But usually my programs and stuff are, they're paid for coaching or teaching or whatever programs. And we can talk about that if that's something that's interesting to someone on one of these calls, but let's not go into all that now. The best thing to do is start with something that's free, something that's really going to move the needle. And then if you want to have a chat, we can do that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. And like really, it's so nice to be able to talk specifically about cats because so often, it's a dog focused world out there. And
Yes.
they're really not just little dogs, they are
No, not at all.
divinely amazing, beautiful, different. I mean, they're really apex. You can't get a better design machine really than a cat. They just uber and everything. And I love them to bits.
Good. I do too. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.